COVID-19 as nonprofit leaders and social entrepreneurs. Looking at our registration list, really delighted with kind of the breadth of individuals who've registered for the session. We certainly have in our attendees people from the not-for-profit sector, people from social enterprise, as well as staff and faculty from Sheridan and others in the community. So quite diverse. And for those of you who sent us questions in your registration, we've passed them on to our presenters, and we'll make sure to get through as many of them as we can as we kind of navigate forward. So a little bit of a roadmap for today. I'll be doing a bit of a welcome and introduction. My name is Golnaz Golnaragi. I am Social Enterprise Lead and one of our mentors in residence with EDGE. And we'll then transition into our formal presentations. We'll have Cherry Rose Tan, who I'll introduce momentarily, do a brief kind of overview of her area of work and what she's seeing in the social enterprise sector. Then Michael Prosserman will take over and do the same. We want to keep this fairly interactive as best as we can with the technology at hand. So both presenters may ask you to comment or raise questions or raise your hand, in which case we can give you access to use your mic and speak. I will say that the session is recorded, so please conduct yourself accordingly with what you're comfortable with. And then we'll have a bit of time for Q&A with the audience and with the panel, and then wrap up and close. We should be done by 11:30 on the nose. That's sort of the plan. A little bit of housekeeping. So I'm actually going to revert the mic to one of my colleagues in a second, but wanted to orient everyone to WEBEX. It's a platform that's a bit new to all of us. And so behind the scenes, we have Carissa, one of my team members who's been phenomenal at the event today, as well as Chris Adams, who is one of our IT gurus at Sheridan, who's here to help us today. Chris, if I could ask you, if you wouldn't mind using your mic just to take us through a few of the functions. So we have a chat function that is available to everyone that you can use throughout to interact with each other. If you have questions, please throw them into the Q&A screen, and you have the option to share the questions with all attendees or with the panel members. So as our speakers are talking, if you have any questions, we do ask that you throw them in there, and we'll monitor them and we'll make sure that they're addressed. You have the option also, once we get to the Q&A, to raise your hand, in which case we'll keep an eye, and in order of hands raised, we'll give you mic access if you do want to talk and share kind of what you're seeing or any questions for our panels. Chris, is there anything you'd like to add in terms of the features just to make this?
No, I think you've covered it off there. The only one caveat I might say is the Q&A, when people submit a question, will come to the panel, and then the panel will respond either directly to the individual or to the group in large.
Great. Okay. Fantastic. All right. So a little bit about Sheridan Edge for those of you who may not know who we are. Edge is Sheridan College's home for entrepreneurs and change makers. And we focus on acting as a bridge into Sheridan as well as out into the community. And we focus on connecting entrepreneurs and change makers to creativity, creative problem solving, which are kind of cornerstones of what we do at Sheridan, amongst many other things. And we also work to ensure that our members, our entrepreneurs, are supported through programming, an inclusive community, as well as mentors, both in residence as well as volunteer mentors that we have access to in the community through our network. We are celebrating 2 years of operation now and have supported more than 150 ventures during this time. We have entrepreneurs that are housed within our space as well as more broadly. And again, as I mentioned before, we provide training, mentorship. We also have a workspace and support to access funding as well. We serve, obviously, Sheridan students. They're a really important stakeholder for us in terms of fostering entrepreneurial thinking and entrepreneurialism and change making, our alumni, faculty and staff, as well as the broader community. So this is what Edge looks like on non-remote days. As you can see on the far left side, this is our hub space. And yes, that is a Lego wall. This space is open to community during our office hours, open hours. Really anyone can come in and use that space. We also have the co-working space that's available to our ventures that are part of our formal programming. And also, again, we're open to community and do a fair amount of programming with our community, for example, this event being one of them. In terms of our different levels of program that we have available to the community and our students, we start with Explore, which is really that I may not have an idea yet, or I may, but I'm not really sure how to, how to navigate forward, all the way to Soar, where members are at the point of growth and are looking for efficiencies and scaling, et cetera. So we serve startups and ventures at all stages. Also, in terms of programming, we've been really, really honored to have partners like the Mississauga Community Foundation as one of our funders amongst several, and to be able to provide funding to our social enterprise community members. And so funding is a big one. Certainly I get as an entrepreneur myself, and so we recently were able to offer the Social Enterprise Innovators Grant to our members, as well as the Advantage Fund, which we had running this past semester, and the Investment Readiness Program. So we are delighted to be partnering with the Oakville Community Foundation on the Investment Readiness Program, as well as other partners. So we're very, very devoted and keen to bring funding to our community as best as we can. Also, a quick plug for an event that we have coming up in partnership with iCube, which is University of Toronto, Mississauga's entrepreneurship space and hub. Our upcoming event is called Startups Here, and it's a chance to make meaningful connections for entrepreneurs and change makers. And so we have joined forces, as I mentioned, with iCube to bring the startup community together. And those that register, the link is there if you want to take a picture, and we'll send you the slides after this event as well. You'll have the opportunity to exchange ideas with other local entrepreneurs, find talent if that's of interest, get insights from industry experts, and learn how to access supports to help you grow your early stage startup or social enterprise. All right, so that was my initial overall orientation to who we are. I'd like to now introduce our two incredible speakers. I've had the pleasure of knowing Michael for about a year now, and through Michael, we met Charity Rose Tan, so thank you both for being here with us. A bit of introduction. So Charity Rose Tan is a fifth-generation entrepreneur who lives and breathes what it means to create companies that matter. With 12 years of experience in psychology, she has guided thousands through the trenches of mental health. A mentor for Inc. Founders Project, she coaches CEOs on emotional resilience for the tech industry, and as well as moonshot leadership. As the CEO of Real Talk, the mental health movement for the tech industry, she speaks on stages around the world. With 70+ champions across North America, CEOs pledge their most vulnerable stories, which is a big deal. I think vulnerability is strength, truly. And she's a mental health authority. She's been featured on Forbes, Inc., and more, and she teaches at the Schulich School of Business. We also have Michael Prosserman. He's an author, b-boy breakdancer, truly a Renaissance person, I would say. University instructor and professional speaker who specializes in scaling startups and integrating mental well-being into team culture, innovation in fundraising, and healthy succession of longtime leaders. In Michael's new book called Building Unity, Leading a Nonprofit from Spark to Succession, he shares practical tools and stories to launching, leading, and leaving a sustainable organization. And for those of you who may not know, as you can see on the screen, Michael is founder of Unity Charity. So he's scaled grassroots organizations from the ground up, including founder of Unity Charity, which is an organization using hip hop to improve youth mental health. And over 15 years, Michael grew Unity from a volunteer group to employing over 80 staff, which is no small feat, raising $7 million. So Michael, thank you. Sherry, Rose, thank you for being with us. And without further ado, I'm going to unshare my screen and I'm going to pass the ball to Sherry Rostan to take over. If I could make sure, Chris, if you could also please mute yourself, that would be great. And I will do the same.
Awesome. Thanks so much for passing it over. So good morning, everyone. It is so great to be here. I'm really honored to be able to speak to you all, especially about social entrepreneurship, because I'm sure many of you are very present to just what's happening, not just in our communities or in our country, but just what's happening on the planet with COVID-19. And with all of that's happening, I think more than ever, there are a lot of communities that need our passion, that need our mission out there in the world. So I'm excited to be able to talk more about this. So the presentation that I'm going to be doing, so I'm switching to full screen. So what I'm going to be talking about today is really talking about what social entrepreneurship looks like right now in the for-profit space. And I'm so excited to be doing this presentation, particularly with Mike, because we've coordinated our keynotes in a way. So I'll be talking about sort of the for-profit space for people who are in this particular area. And then Mike is going to go right after with his keynote talking about what he's seeing in the nonprofit space. So you have ideas for both sectors. And what we're also going to say, obviously this, what we're doing is very interactive, but if you do have a question that is maybe a little bit longer, then we're encouraging you to please write or take notes on, let's say, the question that you might be having, if it's a longer form question, and then Mike and I will be happy to answer it right after. So we've got a portion dedicated afterwards for Q&A for either one of us or both of us at the same time. So to talk
Sherry,
a little bit.
sorry to interrupt. I can't actually see your screen. Could I ask the attendees if you can type in the chat box, can you see Sherry Rose's screen? Can you see her slides? If not, we're going to try resharing if it's not visible to you.
Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know about that.
No problem. I wanted to catch that. So Michael, can you see Sherry's screen or no? If you can just give us a thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, so we can't see it. So if you could please unshare and share again. And if it doesn't work, then I will share for you.
That was my technical difficulties dance.
I love it. I think we should all do it. I'm not sure where she went. We do need technical difficulties music for sure. While we wait for Cherry to come on board again, Michael, would it make sense for you to maybe start us off and we just flip the order?
Yeah, I mean, if that works right away, I'm down to jump right in.
Okay, why don't we do that, because I'm not sure if Cherry's having technical difficulties or not. So could we please give Michael presenter rights? And if we could mute Cherry for now, Chris, that would be great.
Yay. Can you see me?
Absolutely, we can see you, yes.
You can see the screen?
We can see the screen.
Okay, sweet. So if you're cool with it, I'm gonna jump right in. I'm gonna time myself and we're good to go.
Yeah, go for it.
Great, awesome. So sorry about that, everyone. Welcome, thank you for taking the time. I know time is precious right now. Your time is valuable and I really wanna respect that. And also, I really wanna call attention to something that's most important for me at least is, and talking about for those of you who heard how I'm doing today, so best. But I think it's important to take care of yourself. So I really want to emphasize that yes, we're talking about business. Yes, we're talking about nonprofits. Yes, we're talking about being successful and trying to get through this on an organizational level. But for me, fundamentally, the most important thing is you and the care that you need, and really being in tune with that. So I just want to start with that and acknowledge that like there's human beings behind all these things that we're doing. So really take the whole person into account as we're navigating this stuff. Secondly, I also want to start by saying I know nothing. So if you sort of signed up to this with the intention of hoping to, hear someone talk about something that knows something about what's happening, I know as little as everyone else. So you can sign off now if you thought you were going to get some sort of secret sauce that, someone knew about something that you didn't know. Like I know as little as you do. So I just wanted to start by saying that because, anyone who says they know what's going on right now, to be honest, is, they're just a little bit not all honest, I guess. So I just wanted to start with that sort of sincerity. And I also wanted to say, if there's anything that can be helpful to you during this, please drop a question. I can't see the question, so maybe someone speak up, Golnaz or whoever, to let me know if a question pops up, and I would be happy to jump in and address that right away. So that being said, I've spent a lot of time in the last 3 weeks sort of stressing out personally, but also trying to support nonprofit leaders during this time. And I just literally spend, whether it's an hour on a phone call talking about a pivot, or it's a peer group session with, in the last 3 weeks, I've been on peer group executive director calls with about 55 EDs. And really, there is no expertise here. We're all just making it up as we're going along. So I really want to talk about that. So I'm going to present questions, some questions that you might want to consider. I'm going to give examples of things that I'm hearing, and obviously make sure that that's confidential and anonymized. And I'm going to also share some of the practices that it took to build the unity back in the day when we did do that, which is a big part of my new book. And also, quite randomly, I'm a breakdancer, as Golnaz mentioned, which has nothing to do with anything. But if you want to see me spin around on my head, you can check out my Instagram down there at the bottom. And if you want to stay in touch about the work that I'm doing, that's my website for the non-breakdancing related nonprofit consulting stuff at the bottom, Epic Leadership. So the first question I wanted to start with is, and you can either answer this in the box or really just reflect on it if you find it to be relevant, is how can you build responsible, responsive, and resilient organizations in times of crisis? I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't come to you with an answer. I came with a bunch of questions. So again, if this is the time where you thought answers were coming, maybe Cherry Rose has more answers, but I have more questions. So hopefully, reflecting on these questions, I believe people have the agency and ability to solve their own problems and come to better solutions than if they're given answers. So I really want you to dig deep into questions right now, if that feels right for you, because I really believe we have lots of different resources that we're going to need to repurpose right now in new and profound ways that we never would have imagined. So how can we build responsive? Responsive is a big word right now. Resilient, which is hard to be right now, and ultimately responsible, like not just doing things because we're chasing the money or because we're, whatever, just trying to survive, but at the cost of something else. So really, there's a lot in this question. It's quite layered, and it's actually the main theme of my new book, which is coming out in September. And I want to sort of lean on some of the philosophies that I've come up with, because they're actually strangely relevant to COVID. And again, they're just questions; they're not really answers. But I'll sort of rewind, like, who am I? What am I talking about? Why am I here? This is me as a baby, a breakdancer. I started when I was a young kid. My mom actually was a huge influence in my life, and I want to talk about her only because it's relevant in the sense of it's the reason why I started Unity. My mom is that reason, and she's really struggled with some serious mental illness as I was a young person, and I find that really the motivator to me wanting to do something about mental health. And me being a baby who sent it on my head, I also wanted to like I love breakdance, b-boying and breaking and the breaking community. So I took those passions and I put them all together. And this is an interesting thought right now because there's a lot of energy happening and a lot of like changes in the world and feeling like we want to do something about it. And anyways, I'm sort of tangenting and my dog is sort of groaning in the background there. Yeah, and I just put it all together and I took all these things that had affected my life and I tried to do something about it. So I started Unity with a bunch of artists in my basement. We were a bunch of volunteers. I was in grade 11 and we took this idea and we built it and we just put in one step at a time and we tried things and they failed and we learned and we tried things and we failed and we learned and then we kept moving one brick at a time into the right direction that eventually led us to being able to hire 80 staff and take this program all across Canada, supporting youth mental health through hip hop, essentially. And I really think of myself as this guy, except slightly less bald, which is building the plane while flying it. And I really think this is a metaphor that's strangely relevant. Again, this is a big part of my new book and the way I believe we should be building social purpose ideas into the world is we don't have the answers, you know. Anyone who claims to have the answers, you know, needs to sort of check their ego, to be honest. I really believe we have to explore and ask questions and engage community and work with the communities that we're serving to actually build things for and with those communities. And they should be the leaders of the initiatives in many cases that are serving their own community. And I really believe that this building the plane while flying it metaphor is really, 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 really relevant right now because we do not know what we're doing. We're literally building the plane as it's sort of crashing towards the ground. And as we get sort of some airtime, we're like, okay, we have a few more minutes until another light turns on and we need to figure out how to fix that. So I really, you know, this metaphor of building the plane while flying it really feels, it's always felt relevant to me, but right now it feels even more relevant. So these are, this is a group of awesome nonprofit EDs. I mentioned I was working with executive directors. I also believe in the power of peer support. I don't believe that anyone has the answers, as I said, but I do believe the people who are on the ground practicing, building the plane while flying it on their own right now are the ones who have the most intel on what's going on right now. And these are all executive directors of varying size organizations that meet up every week. Also, if you're interested in joining those conversations, I'm offering them every Wednesday for free for the next few weeks. So please join these confidential conversations where we're just sharing what's working and what our biggest challenges are. Now we're on Zoom, of course. This was obviously a long time ago when we met in person. Now these are happening on Zoom. Again, if you'd like to join these conversations, I have nothing to teach you, but people who are practicing the real reality of what's happening on the ground right now, you know, they're living examples of building the plane while flying it. So I know I'm speaking quickly, but I really care and I want to give all the information and questions and thoughts I can. I apologize if this is too fast. Again, if you have a question, please interrupt. If some questions have hit the board and I haven't seen them, I don't know if I can minimize this and check, but just interrupt me, Golnaz or anyone, just like with your voice.
I've got your back, Michael. We'll make sure we do.
Cool, and it's good to know you're still there. I wasn't sure. You know when you like are talking on the phone for like 10 minutes and you like haven't heard something and you had all the best points and you're like, yeah, I'm glad I said that. And then you like look at your phone and it's off. So I'm happy you're there. Cool. If anything, maybe this webinar is entertaining. So how are you responding? So I really think taking a step back from all of this is everyone in this room and in this situation is in a different place. To sort of paintbrush and say one nonprofit is like another nonprofit or one individual's experience is like another individual's experience is completely absurd. You know, there are people who are might have even be physically ill right now due to the virus, family, friends who are being affected, organizations that are in different stages of responding, whether they're the front line or the third line or the second line. Like, everyone's in a different boat here. Even living conditions. Do you have kids pulling on your leg right now, or like, what situation are you in? So I would really ask to reflect on like what stage and what context are you in before deciding on how to respond. Because it does matter, and it does matter. And again, your well-being and your ability to support your community right now is vital, but also to support yourself. So yeah, go ahead. Or was that just an adjustment? I didn't.
Okay, here I am. It's Golnaz again. If I could maybe just to get some interactivity going to help Michael or participants, if you can type in the chat box, not the Q&A, but the chat box, what stage are you in, so that we can get a feel for what stage you're at, and then we'll take it from there. So Michael, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's great, and I'd like to pull that chat box up as I'm looking at this, so I can see that. I can't do that, but that's okay. Please type those in as you're sort of coming along here. Get my chat.
And I'll read them out to you as well. Besma says, hi, Mike.
Besma.
We have Kyle is maintaining planning for growth, and others, please chime in. I can read them out loud just to help Mike out. But you can continue. Please continue with your presentation, and I'll just pipe in from time to time.
Cool. And now I can see the chat box. So like I just figured it out as we were all figuring that out. So, okay, sweet. So there's a lot of people in a lot of different places. And that's really the point, is there's no one, sort of no paintbrush solution right now. You're good if you know what you're doing next week, to be honest. But some of the things that I'm seeing, folks, again, through the experiences that I'm hearing, these are sort of three spaces I find people are in with their businesses, specifically their nonprofits. Actually, I focus on nonprofits. Cherry Rose is more focused on like the social startups businesses side. Some are ramping up. They're like, I need to respond right now. There's so many things happening. My community needs me, and I'm the one to do that. Some are just like, and a large portion, Ontario Nonprofit Network released some survey results that are showing like a lot of nonprofits are closing down. Many are hibernating, and many just let go more than half of their staff. I think even up to 75% of their staff. And now with the new wage subsidy qualifications for charities, some of that's changing. And I know an organization that's multi-million dollars that had to let go of many staff, and now they're actually able to apply for the wage subsidy. So like these things are changing daily, but a lot of people are cutting back so that they are around in many years from now to be able to provide this service when we do get out of it. And they're trying to figure out what is the right time. I put that in quotation marks because, like, again, no one has answers, and no one, to say what is right or wrong right now is very difficult because it does change week to week. And then some were about to close or really in a struggling position and are looking for this as an opportunity to merge or, sort of end that story in a way that is dignified and just the right way for their community. And it does happen, and it is happening. And I don't want to not acknowledge that because it is a reality for some. Again, people need to have those difficult conversations now, even consider them in response to not wanting to get to that place. I'm not sure if there's any other sort of stages you're seeing folks in their companies right now. I'll sort of ask that to the chat box again, if you want to type in to the chat box, like what are things aside from this that you're seeing? And I'll sort of keep that in my purview on the side there. I don't know if I just used the word purview correctly, but if I did, that was really cool. Okay. So this is actually pulled from my book. This is sort of the 6-step stages that I personally went through when building Unity. It started with the spark, which was the inspiration, my mom and what she had gone through, me personally struggling with mental health challenges, and being in the hip hop community. I just wanted to share that outlet with other young people. And that was what sparked Unity. And then we just started trying stuff. We started making things up as we were going along, building that plane while flying it, and learning from and with our community. And then we had to build trust within a team. Our team was vital, and we couldn't have done the work without, we can't do this work alone. We needed teams to mobilize and be a part of that, that effort, and growing that effort through funders and networks and advocacy and that next stage, and then evolve. I eventually, after 15 years, left Unity and started my own consultancy because I felt there was nothing else I could add, which is interesting. In this same sort of cycle, if I placed COVID, I would say we're in this sort of natural evolution where we're like being forced to evolve. And in many cases, we're trying to figure out our spark, like what's our values and our mission and what matters to us as we respond. Like, what are we actually building now? We might be building a whole new product because maybe we ran camps for 20 years and we can't go to camp right now, like we can't do these things we used to do. So what are the new things we're building? And many of them are online, and there's so many barriers online that make that very challenging for the most vulnerable communities. So a lot of people are asking these questions. And then trust, like, how do I remotivate my team when their job description just changed overnight and they're struggling personally and they're afraid of losing their jobs, or some of them have. And then finally, cool, we got this intervention, this new thing going. It's working. Our team is, on good days excited, on bad days, working through it. How do we actually scale this thing right now until we sort of come out of the new normal? So this is sort of, again, this is, I wouldn't make this look like some sort of scientific process or something that, applies to others in other contexts, but I just found it interesting how this same framework I created well before COVID, based on my own experience and what helped me scale Unity, is now relevant in a completely new way. I think self-reflection for me personally, and that's why I ask so many questions, is the foundation of the work that I do for and with community. Again, understanding our context and the context of those that we serve, our clients, our community, and then really sticking to our values right now and articulating them and talking about them with our teams, because like, honestly, it's so easy to creep away from our true mission. There's like strange, I don't like using the word opportunity now because it doesn't feel like the right word. But I do definitely think that there's things that people are leveraging that are off mission, and they're making real choices to go off mission to serve new communities in ways that they feel is appropriate. And that's kind of why I wanted to really focus on this, like, building the plane while flying it, always learning mentality, because we're all just doing our best right now. And really figuring out, like, what does your community need right now? And what is your best role to support and serve them within your capacity, your context, and your values? Because it's so easy to say, okay, we're going to start packing food boxes and do this. And if that's not something that you feel is aligned with your team and your values and your where you come from and what you want to be continuing to do, then that could become problematic in 2 years when you're getting back to business and back to the regular flow of things, if that even happens. And again, I don't know what's going to happen. No one knows. Justin Trudeau doesn't know. So this is so far beyond anyone's knowledge.
Mike, can I pipe in quickly? Just with a few comments, if you don't mind. We have in the chat box Kyle saying grantors are rerouting funds to frontline efforts. That's certainly something we're seeing. Is that something that you will address or have thoughts on?
Yes, I'm going to talk about 3 things. So I'm going to skip ahead to that exactly. So thanks for highlighting that, and thanks, Kyle, for bringing that up. And again, anyone, feel free to drop comments in there. There's 3 things I'm going to talk about. It's mission, money, and teams. So as we move forward, I'm just going to sort of finish this. It's actually the next slide, so it's perfectly timed. Mission, money, and teams. But essentially, once you've sort of learned and figured out what role you want to play, it's about actually figuring out what logistically is possible now. To Kyle's point, call your funders, because a lot of them are rerouting that funding. I'm sure you've already done this 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. But then there's new funding. Again, I hate the word opportunity right now, but new funding possibilities based on companies that are shifting. So really paying attention. I'll share some links after this, but there's some really great companies that have pivoted and are continuing to pivot. And I know some that are about to make some big announcements for new funding that's going to be coming specifically rerouted to COVID-19 frontline. And some people are calling the second line of defense like the survival of certain orgs that are vital, not now, but in the second line, sort of pivotal and providing operational support. And it's like, how do you get to the front of those lines? And it's really difficult. And if you're not able to, hibernating may be another option until and focusing on the government subsidies that are available. So there's no good answers. There's just what's relevant for your context, what's right for you. And there are things you can do to sort of move those things forward and respond. So as things evolve, communicating transparently, finding new ways to engage your board, and doing your best to motivate your team without ignoring the realities of what's going on. So I'll leave you with this question, and it's something to think about and ponder on. And I recognize I'm running out of time, so I'm going to just sort of move forward. But I do think this is an important question to consider. Like, what's the difference for you between reacting and responding? And I know that seems like a leading question, but if you can take a moment to just reflect on this as a thought right now, are there moments that you've reacted? And what was the result of that? What was the impact of that? Are there moments where you've responded? And what were the impacts of that? Yeah, Kyle says reacting is fear-based, responding is fact-based. Likely so. And how do we move to a place of responding versus reacting is really what I'm getting at here. It's not to dig too deeply into this, but it is to reflect on your own sort of in the last 3 weeks, when have you reacted, when have you responded, and how can we do better at responding? And sometimes it requires that pause, that like, I'm going to talk to my team, I'm going to talk to my community, I'm going to talk to my funders, I'm going to make 10 budget scenarios, you know, like what is that pause for you? And what does that really look like so that you can feel in your heart like you're responding in the best way you can, and not just like, oh shoot, something got thrown at me, I'm going to just throw it back, or I'm going to just do my first reaction.
I love this comment, Mike, about speak directly to your community members to understand their needs. I think that's crucial right now in terms of, to your point about adding value to first and foremost taking time. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're not speaking to your community, it's very easy to make up what we think people need right now, what sounds like a good solution. And it's just, it's so inappropriate now, and it's always been inappropriate. It's never not been inappropriate, but it's really important to involve the voices of the people that you're working with, ideally on your team, if not possible, like really, I know these flash surveys are super irritating, and the webinars, it's just too much, but it's so important to find authentic ways to meet people where they're at, in ways that, if they don't have internet access, how are you learning what they need and involving them in that process? Because otherwise it's just like, you might as well in some cases be hibernating. That's, because you can cause harm in this time. And I just want to sort of acknowledge that there is this intention and then there's the outcome, and those are not always aligned. So I just want to challenge you in a way that's positive and reinforcing, but also like, so you can question yourself, because I'm not here to tell you what to do. And then there's also, yes, reacting is driven by fear, responding is thinking and focusing on the moment and the big picture, absolutely. So I'm going to sort of blast through, because I only have like 2 more minutes here, and I don't want to take away the time from Cherry Rose or the other, the opportunity for us to have a Q&A. So the other piece is, in turn with the responding, is like, how do we create responses that are actually going to last in the new normal? Like the new normal, there's so many funny words, unprecedented, new normal, like all these things that like I'm like, it's just so many buzzwords, like all these buzzwords. I hate buzzwords. But like, how do we create responses that actually last, so that we're investing our time? Some things that people I've seen have been doing, working on internal policies, conducting evaluations, improving data monitoring, developing remote work processes, creating online programming that's accessible to the most vulnerable, which is a big challenge right now, and a lot of people are struggling with it. I've even heard someone doing a virtual gala who's going to mail boxes. I'm not exactly sure, but virtual galas, engaging the board, like putting pressure on your board to actually step up right now and not float. This is the time for them to get involved. So I'll sort of end on this, and I will get to this slide, so I'll just sort of end here. Mission, money, and team. Like ultimately, these are the things that I'm finding that nonprofits are focusing on: staying on their mission, getting that money right now in any way they can that they feel is responsible and responsive to the time, and supporting their teams. So as I sort of wrap up, this is something we just spoke about, is how do you engage your community? So it's perfect. We've already gone over this. And what's your organization's role in doing this? Something I want to bring to your attention is how is your pie of support shifting right now? Really doing an inventory of your revenue pipeline. I see funders growing in some areas, people finding new funders, and even creating new opportunities through advocacy and even crowdfunding. I love this image. I've always used this image, but it reflects now. It feels more relevant now than ever before. Is like, we have very limited resources. I always manage on a tight budget at Unity, but while still paying people respectfully and always paying artists on time. But like, we have to get creative with our resources. So how can we redeploy our resources and get really resourceful right now? Like, what are some things we can do to sort of repurpose previous things that we had once taken for granted, and while we're still respecting the people that are involved in our organizations? Really. And the last thing is team and self. I'll just sort of end on this, is how do you engage your teams as the roles shift? How do you maintain trust in a world that feels like we can't trust a lot of people right now? How do you keep morale in competition with fear, which is everywhere? And how do you lead when you don't even know what the heck is going on? Like, I literally hear leaders every day being like, I don't actually know what's happening, and I'm leading a team of 20 people. Like, how is that possible? So being really honest about that with yourself, and communicating frequently, taking care of yourself, listening, and giving people space to focus on what's most urgent. Like, some people are just not ready to get excited about working on something new right now, and that is 100% okay. Like, whatever you're feeling right now is okay, and I really just want to end on that. So last thing I'll say is, sorry for going overtime. I'm on 3 minutes overtime. Is stay connected to each other. This is something that I'm finding folks are really benefiting from in my circle. Advocate collectively to the government. It's actually making an impact now. I've seen millions and millions of dollars go out to causes that would not have gone out to causes because people are doing joint advocacy. Join webinars, even though I'm webinared out, that are relevant. Peer groups. If anyone wants to join the peer group that I offer, feel free to subscribe to this link, and I promise you I'll send you a link. I'm offering all sorts of free coaching right now, one-on-one and in group circles. I really don't want to see organizations that are doing amazing work fall apart right now, and I believe peer support is a powerful way to support each other through this. And also, if you're interested in the book, like, if you subscribe, you'll be able to find out about that. So again, apologies for the slight overtime and the super fast talking. I'm going to pass it to Cherry Rose, and encourage you that if you have any questions to continue to type them into the box.
Great, thank you, Michael. So while Cherry is given access and brings up her slides, there are a number of questions in the Q&A, so at the end we'll make sure to go through them. Please keep the questions coming, and we'll do our best to get through as many of them as we can. All right, Cherry, we can see your screen, which is great, and over to you when you're ready.
Amazing. Okay, I'm so glad that this is working now. Apologies about some of the tech stuff that was happening earlier. So yeah, I'm excited to be able to introduce the second part. And Michael and I created our keynotes together. So you're going to see that there's going to be really interesting themes that are going to lay into the two things. So, I mean, where I kind of want to start off with is, obviously addressing sort of the elephant in the room, right? So where we are right now, especially with COVID-19, is a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of leaders are referring to it as a black swan event, right? So it's an event that maybe we didn't expect it, it's taking us by surprise. And for a lot of people right now, they're in between the range of like maybe seeing it as uncertainty all the way to maybe seeing it as a crisis. And so how do we navigate this? And so kind of what I want to share first, I want to share a little bit of context about just some of my work and then also how this is going to lay into the I'm going to be covering 3 tactical areas that have to do with navigating COVID-19, especially in the for-profit space in particular. So to be really honest with you guys, I mean, I think a lot of you can relate to what I'm about to share. You know, when we start, you know, your social enterprise, your nonprofit, oftentimes, you know, our mission for many of you comes from a really personal place, or sometimes it might come from a place where you've encountered that problem or you've experienced that pain yourself. And so to be really, you know, vulnerable with you, the mental health movement that I currently lead in the tech industry, it's called For Founders by Founders, but we're rebranding to hashtag Real Talk. So sometimes you see it referred that way. I started my movement actually through a Black Swan event, through a lot of pain, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of crisis. And so before transitioning into sort of this social enterprise space, my brother and I, you can kind of see my brother here, and Mike and my brother were friends as well. So my brother and I, we used to run a crypto company, and it had very much a social mission because we were serving countries around the world, specifically around populations that were unbanked, meaning that they were populations that banks didn't want to build or serve in that area because they thought, oh, like these customers are not profitable. And so we were really much in the remittance space, in the crypto space, in terms of really connecting these people to have financial access. And during this journey of, you know, operating this sort of tech social enterprise, it was very, very tough on my brother and I. You can imagine we've been in crypto now 7 years now. And so to be in that space really early on, there was a lot of failure. There was a lot of scarcity. It was hard to get funding. It was hard to convince people what was going on. And then 2 years ago, I hit my version of a Black Swan event. And I want to share it because I'm very conscious to the fact that, and I don't know who it is in the audience, there are some people, there are leaders, there are team members that we have right now that are going through COVID-19, and they're going through some really serious things, whether it's not just talking about cash flow and business, but there's people out there, for example, in my own networks, I have entrepreneurs already who really frankly, who've already lost loved ones to COVID-19. I have people in my business circles who've lost friends to suicide since COVID-19 has happened. And so I want to be conscious to the fact that there's for some people, there's a level of pain that maybe sometimes they don't feel that they can share or ask for help. And that was the situation I was in. So 2 years ago, my Black Swan event was, you know, we were doing this crypto company. We were starting to finally go big after, you know, spending 6 years with very, very little funding, almost having very little cash flow. And, you know, we were closing this big national deal because finally people were really interested in crypto. But at the same time, in a 4-month span in 2017, I was in a major car accident. So I was dealing with PTSD, trauma, depression. 3 months after that, my brother, who you see in this picture, he very suddenly just passed away on Christmas Day, just in his sleep. And then 10 days later, my mom got diagnosed with stage 3C cancer. And this is while we had active investors, we had a board of directors, we just signed this like big national deal that my brother and his best friend closed for our company. And so how do you navigate this Black Swan? And so what I really want to talk about is, so a lot of the work, so what we're going to go into is really talking about tactical areas. And part of my specialty is really about bringing in what I call real talk, bringing in confronting conversation that we need to have together as leaders so that we can actually navigate and really lead powerfully in our organizations. And so I'm going to skip this. So in terms of tactical areas, what I want to talk about today are 3 things. So I'm going to talk about really just the current state of business right now that's happening with COVID-19. And, you know, obviously as a disclaimer, and I know Mike kind of mentioned a little bit about it, what I'm sharing with you is based on sort of best educated guesses. So these are based on conversations that are happening in back doors with investors, happening with founders in terms of our best guesses in terms of where things are going. Then I'm going to talk about tools for opportunity. and then also tools for resilience. Because I think it's so important that as leaders, you know, we're playing the long game and we're making sure that we can obviously take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our communities. Okay, so the first bit I want to talk about is just really talking about context. So where are we at right now, especially when it comes to the world of business? So what I'm hearing, at least in a lot of different communities, is physical distancing right now is really changing the future of work, right? So, you know, if you look at the conversation that was happening a few weeks ago, I think there was a lot of hope that, oh, when we come out of COVID-19, whenever that timeline is, we're just going to go back to the way that things are. And at least what I'm hearing, especially in the for-profit sector, is a lot of people are now predicting, and Mike kind of alluded to this, what they call the new normal. And I sort of referenced a little bit here a website called Trend Hunter, and there's a link in my slides. And platforms like Trend Hunter, for example, are putting out right now these trend reports that they see globally of what industries they feel are going to be upcoming and products that are going to be upcoming because of COVID-19. And the fact is right now that a lot of businesses, you know, maybe we're operating in a very old paradigm. And because COVID-19 has forced so many people to now go into physical distancing, a lot of companies are now building different systems that they didn't think was possible. So for example, like the co-working model right now, the physical accelerator model right now, there's a lot of worry in that particular sector because a lot of startups are now talking about, oh, like when we come out of COVID-19, like I don't actually know if I want to still pay rent to my co-working space. Like, did I even need that office space when I could have actually done those particular operations with Zoom or WebEx or a combination with Slack? And the other thing that's important to know is right now businesses are prioritizing self-sufficiency. So if your services, you know, whether you're a nonprofit, you're a social enterprise, if you're not pivoting your message towards addressing people's concerns about self-sufficiency, oftentimes those messages then are not being prioritized. So to kind of talk about a little bit about what's happening, right? So in the startup world, right? So that's kind of the area that I play in. We're really being tested right now. So in my mental health movement, I have 200 tech CEOs that I talk to, 75 of which are public, meaning that they've shared their mental health stories publicly. So things about depression, things about surviving abuse, things about their experience of what it's like to run a company while dealing with OCD, things like that. And right now in the startup world, in those private conversations, you know, the fact is there's two things. So one, there's a concern about raising money, right? And then the other thing is about cash flow. And the one thing I want to highlight is that raising money is not the same as creating cash flow. So a lot of the big problems that are happening right now is especially, for example, in if you happen to be in the tech world or you happen to be working the world where you have venture capitalists or angel investors, a lot of people right now, really frankly, are in a conservative mode where they're either pulling out their money or they're kind of in a wait mode where they're kind of seeing, okay, if I have 10 portfolio companies, and I only have funds enough for, let's say, 6, I'm going to go and invest in the ones that I feel like are going to make it past COVID-19. And so just to summarize some of the options right now that are on the playing field, I'm sure that you're aware of quite a few of these, right? So there's Canada Emergency Response Benefit, right? So the $2,000 that happen every 4 weeks. So that's for people like individuals. There is the Canada Emergency Business Account, which is specifically for small businesses. So this is a $40,000 loan that's interest-free until December 31 of 2022. And then more recently, they've also done the wage subsidy. So this is for employers where they are subsidizing 75% of the salary of, let's say, your payroll for up to 12 weeks. But I think what I want to address in that sort of elephant in the room, and I know this has been something coming up with just even a lot of my people, is that as much as our government is trying to be responsive, if you happen to be a startup that's been running lean, or you run a model that's non-traditional, you know, one of the things that's kind of a hard conversation that I've been having with a lot of my founders is that, you know, these particular options, at least the three that I've written on the board, they might not actually be usable, right? So for example, if your startup is pre-revenue, it's not going to qualify for the emergency business account. And for example, if your startup is currently using contractors or freelancers, then it's also not going to be eligible for the wage subsidy. And so what I'm going to talk about in this is like, how can we be resilient, right, in this particular space? And I know I just saw a comment, it kind of floated a little bit. I think it was from, was it Nikki, I think? Yes, right. So Nikki was just mentioning, thank you for seeing us lean startups. We don't qualify for almost anything. And Nikki, I just want to say to you, like what you're going through right now, it's totally normal. And even, for example, a lot of publications right now. So for example, Beta Kit, let's see if I can switch back here. For example, Beta Kit right now, which is a big sort of media company in Canada that specifically works around tech companies. There is a petition even going on right now with all these lean startups because so many people in our groups right now don't even qualify for the funding. And so recently, the government of Ontario actually even recently hired back a startup lead because they're realizing that startups right now don't qualify for a lot of this funding. So I know they're trying to work through it right now. So one thing to mention, right? I know we're so passionate about our mission, but it's important to remember, so cash flow is king, right? So no money, no mission, and money amplifies the reach of our message. And I think to connect with what, you know, Mike is saying, it's so important for us as leaders. I know that it's a really tough place to be in right now. You know, it's super unexpected. But we have to be able to kind of shift away from reacting to responding and sort of sit with our teams to sort of gather the intel from our industries and to sort of say to ourselves, okay, based on my educated guess, based on the research I've got access to, like, do I think that, you know, if I'm looking long term and I want my companies to survive or I want my movement to survive, is it really in our best interest right now to continue operating? Or maybe do we have to hibernate and go really lean, even though it's maybe a really painful decision? Or maybe if we have capacity right now, maybe there's a particular way we could pivot our message or pivot our offerings. And so what I want to talk about is I want to talk about some of the tools that have been happening right now in my business masterminds I've been having in very particular circles. So I belong to a mastermind of like community leaders. And one of the things that we've been talking about is this particular idea about how do we find opportunities. And so I want to give you sort of a framework around this. A lot of people right now who are in reaction mode are putting out like a lot of content, are trying to do like everything. They're trying to do like 5 things simultaneously. And the thing is, once people start going away from panic mode, we're going to start focusing on responding. And because we have lean resources, it is so important that we actually take time to strategize first before we start spreading our resources around. And so here's the framework. So in COVID-19 right now, we have 2 particular choices that we can do. So either one, we can use our resources and we can respond to a current need. So it's now. And if you are a nonprofit, if you are a social enterprise that happens to be tied into the self-sufficiency, the survival needs of our community, right, then this might be for you. So for example, one of the champions I have in the movement, they run a company called Inkblot Therapy, which right now is a company that has been rapidly expanding. Like they've like hired on 40 new therapists because they're on the front lines right now of helping people stay sane and calm during COVID-19. But for example, you know, some other people might not be in that space. And so the other option that's available is that maybe you want to consider thinking about cataloging your resources and maybe strategizing, meeting where the puck is going to go. And so that's kind of a Wayne Gretzky quote, right? So meeting where the puck is going to go and thinking about, okay, after COVID-19, what do I think people are going to be needing or people are going to be anticipating? So to give you an example of this, because I've already been seeing it in certain verticals. So right now, the working from home, the co-working space, right? So a lot of accelerators, whether it's social enterprise, whether it's tech, a lot of people are being hit hard by COVID-19. And what's so fascinating for me is seeing how differently people are using this framework to respond. So to give you an example of people who are responding to your current needs. So this is a co-working space called Verity. That is a top leadership club in Toronto. So they actually have a physical building. They have like meeting spaces, event spaces. They have a built-in restaurant. So you can imagine that their services for the longest time have been obviously brick or mortar. But because they work on sort of a yearly membership, and people are still paying fees, they're having to respond to current needs. So what they're doing right now is every single day, they've got Verity sessions that are online. They've taken all of their fitness instructors, their yoga instructors online. And every single day, they even have webinars that are specifically towards different things that people need. The other really cool thing as well is that, you know, brick and mortar people are being very creative. So for example, this is a friend that I know, so Yoga with Cassandra, where, you know, her particular industry or her particular business has like 3 to 5x since COVID-19. And so for people who are brick and mortar who are still essential services, so we're talking about you're talking about mental health, physical health, fitness, etc. If you are in a space where you're being very focused, you can actually pivot your resources online. And so in that time, in like the last 4 weeks, it's like she's super focused on her YouTube channel. She's super focused on her membership platform and making sure that her community is getting access to a lot of yoga and mental health resources. And then as another example, right, as a framework, so you can also meet where the puck will go. So if you're feeling like, oh, I can feel even with my team, even in pivoting all the resources, that I'm feeling I'm not going to have a good chance to be able to compete with other people who are already like leading that industry or leading that niche, you can kind of strategize and think about what's going to be upcoming. So for example, I've seen people right now who've been taking their co-working spaces and they're thinking about now creating virtual co-working accelerators because they're anticipating that the future of work trend is going to be that there's going to be a segment, you know, maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 20% of people that are coming out of COVID-19 and not wanting to go back to a physical co-working space. So they're already building some of those structures there so that they are the number one or number two offering that everyone's going to be thinking about coming out of sort of this physical distancing era. And so I know that Golden Ads in particular already has the slides, but these are examples or screenshots I have. So obviously Verity is talking about their webinars. These are all online. We've got Yoga with Cassandra that I kind of mentioned, and her, you know, her subscriptions going way up right now, and they're doing online challenges to engage people. This is the one about the deep co-working sprints that are available, which was also in the slide. And then the last one is the Council Club, which has to do with creating an online sort of virtual accelerator. So those are some examples there. And I know I'm going through it a little bit quickly, but you can always take a look at it in the slides. And so, you know, to kind of give an example for this, right? You know, when I first started the movement, so this was like almost 2.5 years ago, people in the market were in a really different place, right? It was a booming market. People were really receptive to the messaging of it being really hopeful, about it helping our people, about it, you know, taking a stand. And the thing is, you know, especially when we're thinking about this framework of responding to current need, or planning for where the puck is going to go, it's so important to be conscious of the language that people are using. And right now, because it's a language of self-sufficiency, even for ourselves as a social enterprise, we're actually pivoting too. So like we're launching a whole new brand, a whole new website. We've been working on a podcast this past month. And so now we're even pivoting to reflect the needs of our community. And I know Mike has mentioned that as well. Like we have to be very conscious to where our community and our people are at. And so where we're, for example, pivoting towards is like the space for confronting conversation. So giving people actual tangible tools and processes so they can take what we do, which is capturing the most vulnerable stories, oftentimes the rock bottom stories of founders, and now turning it almost into a business protocol where we're teaching people like, hey, you can use this conversation tool between a VC, like a venture capitalist, and a founder. Or you can use this tool between a founder and their team that maybe they have to let go of. And so that's kind of an example of a way that we've also been pivoting amongst COVID-19. And so, you know, as you're thinking about your resources and thinking about how you're going to be creating opportunity in this time, I really invite each of you, like, especially maybe you can post in the chat, like, do you feel right now with your business that it's time for you to be like engines on, you know, we're responding to the current need? Or are you maybe feeling that, hey, I feel like it's actually a better strategy to respond or to go where the puck is going to go? So I would love to see what you think, and you could definitely put it in the chat.
Great. Cherry, is that the end of your presentation or do you need more time? You're waiting for the chats? Okay, great. Just checking in.
Yeah, thanks for checking in. And I could actually go ahead to maybe the last part with the tools for resilience. And I know afterwards, Mike and I have allotted like 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A. So we can also go into that and talk about your specific businesses because we love that stuff. So the last thing that I want to talk about is resilience. And this is so important because I think as founders, as entrepreneurs, as executive directors, you know, a lot of you are so giving, right? Like I think so many of us start our businesses from a place of like contribution. But my like sort of, especially the movement that I lead, like I'm really taking a stand for all of you. Like I am very passionate about making sure that all of you are being taken care of as well, right? So we need to take care of ourselves in order to be able to take care of our people. So it's a marathon and not a sprint. And even right now, in terms of the government, right? I mean, they're talking about the vaccine taking 18 to 24 months. And so the last piece I want to leave us with is just really talking about resilience. And it's really about personal resilience and it's really about emotional resilience and not denying the intensity, not denying the high highs and the low lows that maybe you are going through or your team is going through or even your family's going through, right? And so two things I want to leave you with, you know, one being about mindset, the other thing being about self-care. So, you know, I kind of want to talk about and just sort of reveal these are some of the things that I've been hearing in my own community, right? So I've talked to 50 tech founders and investors in the last 2 weeks privately, so one-on-one. And these are things that people have said to me. I've paraphrased it just to protect confidentiality, but to encapsulate some of the examples, right? So I had to lay off all 300 of my employees. I feel like a horrible human being. I have, you know, founders who are telling me that they feel so much guilt around parenting and also being a founder at the same time. So, you know, feeling like a bad parent, like how am I going to, you know, help my son or my daughter who right now is going through a lot of struggle? They don't understand what's going on. And at the same time, like my business is in like panic mode or emergency mode. I have a lot of people talking to me about cash flow. That's, I think, the probably number one concern. People saying that, you know, we went from a model where we had all this cash flow coming in, all of our projections, and now they have zero cash flow and they don't know how long they're going to last. And for those people who maybe were expecting grant money, who are expecting VC money, I'm also hearing from people too, like some investors also pulling out and being scared that, oh, if that one investor pulled out, are other investors going to start doing the same? Like, is this going to become a domino effect? And so I just wanted to be transparent about that, like, I recognize that right now in our community, we're all in different places. And so how can we take care of ourselves during this really tough time? And so one thing I want to talk about, and then this is part of my background as in executive coaching. So I get to do what I do because I have like 12 years of experience in psychology. My practices are trauma informed. I know that a lot of my community might be struggling with depression, anxiety, etc. And so, you know, in the coaching world, one of the things that's been helpful for me, and I use this very actively, is thinking about mindset, right? So it's an overwhelming time right now, and it's important that we have ways to navigate. And so one of the things I want to talk about is a lot of people right now are being really, really hard on themselves. And I'm noticing it in the languaging of leaders, that most people right now are coming from right or wrong, and they're coming from a place of blame. And of course, because there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of sadness, a lot of anger, there's a lot of grief, especially for people who've had to let go of their companies or their team, right? So languaging like, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, it's their fault. So the thing that I want to suggest is, from a productivity standpoint, is, you know, it's important for us to feel the feelings and to acknowledge and to label them. But as leaders, when we show up in our groups, we need to make sure that we have a different type of languaging that actually allows for solutions to come through. And so the coaching distinction is, what if we come from workability? So two questions I often ask, and this is kind of, I'll give the example in the next slide, is like the questions that I ask myself, like once I have space for myself to feel the sadness, or maybe it's the anger, or maybe it's the grief, because I still need that space, is now with my team, I'm asking them two questions. So it's, or my community. So like, what is working? And then what is not working? And the language is very specific, because when we talk about ability, it's not coming from a place of blame anymore. So for example, to be really transparent with all of you, you know, because of COVID-19, like a lot of our cash flow, we went from lots and lots of cash flow to like, oh, like all like 3 revenue streams completely gone, like wiped in a single day, right? So we were doing sponsorship, totally gone, not working. In-person launch event, totally gone. In-person keynotes, gone, right? Event, like our event sales, ticket sales, totally gone. And so by coming from this place where we're just like doing things bullet point by bullet point, it starts to become manageable. So now I can kind of see, as I'm looking through my list, okay, like what are the assets or what are the resources that I can still play with and be able to sort of pivot. So for example, we're now pivoting and doing a lot of podcasting. We're doing a lot of building mental health playbooks and things that we could like sell to like VCs, sell to founders to build a type of income. And so that's kind of what I want to leave with you with. I know I'm a little bit over time, and I want to leave some time for keynote, but there's other slides available as well for self-care. And then the last thing I'll talk about, I'll say is, you know, if you want to talk with me privately, especially if you're in the for-profit space, here's my email, and happy to have a more private chat with you. So that's kind of where I'm currently at. And I actually am going to stop my sharing right now, because Mike and I want to make sure that we've got time for as many of you as possible to do Q&A.
Thank you so much to both of you. And I think this notion of focus on where the puck will go and make sure you're listening to your customers really is a tweet that stands out. And we have a comment from Chris Beth in the chat box that says that they're too listening to their customers and really focusing on the future, which is great. So I'm going to open it up to the floor, and I'm going to ask my colleagues Carissa and Chris to help out. So to our participants, you have the option of posing questions in the Q&A, or if you'd like to actually speak so we can hear your lovely voices and hear your stories, if you put your hand up, so if you use the hand icon, we will give you mic access. in case you'd like to share and participate that way. So just to get us started, I do have a question around funding. I know when we kind of, took questions from the registration list, there were a number of them around what kind of funding are you seeing, Mike and Sherry, are available to not-for-profits and social enterprises. So there were variations on that. If you have any tips on where we can go to look for funding, it would be super helpful.
Yeah, I could jump in quickly. There's new stuff coming out every day for nonprofits. The other day I saw a link on Imagine Canada's website about all the corporate responses that are happening specifically to COVID-19. So if anyone wants any of the links, I literally have a list of lists. I just realized there's too many lists. So I'm gonna come up with a list of all the lists that I think are useful. So if anyone wants access to that list, by no means, there's probably 20 links, but all of them have to do with funding, have to do with how to apply the benefits in a simple way, because the jargon is so complicated. There's like 2 or 3 like walkthroughs with pictures and do I apply, don't I apply? So I've tried to find all the, how do we simplify all this complex stuff that's really hard to understand. So if anyone wants to access those resources, just drop me a note and I'd be happy to share it. It's like a little Google Drive.
That would be amazing. I completely relate, not only working with entrepreneurs, but also being one myself. It's very hard to navigate what it all means and how to access it. Would it be possible, as we share your slides with everyone, could we include that link in there as well?
For sure.
If you can forward, amazing. That's very generous. All right, I'm going to turn it over to the team. Carissa, maybe you can take over if you don't mind, as well as Chris. And are there any questions in the Q&A or other comments in the chat that you'd like to read out? And again, to the audience, please put your questions and comments in so that we can engage with you. It's really important. Now's your time to ask those questions.
So we have a question from Biravi, and she responded saying that this is where she was as pre-revenue with contract team. I don't know if I should individually apply for the WERB as an individual. So if someone wants to respond to that.
Yeah, I can actually speak to that because I think your model for your team is very similar to mine, actually. So, I mean, to be really frank, like when I decided to build this startup, I decided to do it very differently because I realized that in my last one, like we were burning resources too fast, and I probably was hiring for a lot of things I didn't actually need. Like it was more like for title. So my team actually are all fractional. So that means that I have fractional officers, like for very specific times of the business. And then we also have a lot of contractors. So I hire like experts to help build our systems out. And so this is a discussion that we've been having. So for example, with my team right now, like I've been very frank with them that there are certain members of the team, they know that where we're pivoting is actually where the puck is going to go because we're building trauma-informed resources. And so there are members of our team right now who, for example, are thinking about, hey, actually might be better to go on the CERB, so the $2,000 a month thing, depending on the other clients that they also might have because they're contractors. And we've been in that conversation together. And I've also told them too, like, hey, if you're in a really bad spot and you do need funding from me, let me know. And so I even had somebody in my team who actually is overseas right now and can't even come back to Toronto. And she told me all of her clients were canceling. Could you do something for me? And like I was able to get some funding for her so that she's stable right now. And so I would recommend to just have really transparent conversations with them to see where they're at. And then I have other people on my team who are like, yeah, actually, I feel like I do want to go on the $2,000 a month because at least I know that I have a stable income, and then I can use that time to build my new services during that time. So I would say it's very situational.
So most of the questions have been answered in the Q&A. If anybody would like to ask any additional, please feel free to add some in the question and answer section, or if you'd like to raise your hand, then I can unmute you and then we can get a discussion going. Thank you. So
while we wait for that, I'll pipe in with a question from what was submitted to us. In terms of, we have one person that said, how do we build an audience when our product is locked out of the country? So it sounds like they can't get inventory into the country right now, and so they're in a bit of a holding pattern. So do you have any suggestions on how to build community and sort of engagement? I know it's a bit of a specific question, but if you have any thoughts on that, that would be great.
I could jump in on that. Again, I by no means consider myself an expert. I'm really just sort of echoing what I'm hearing folks doing right now. Checking in for some has been really helpful on a continuous basis. I'm on a board where I'm on 2 different charity boards, Big Brothers and Big Sisters in Jayu, and one of the things they're doing a lot is communicating both internally and externally. Communicating transparently, honestly, and empathetically. We don't know, even saying we don't know is actually, it's not comforting or helpful necessarily, but it acknowledges the truth. So being really truthful in those communications and engaging, really giving people the individual space to sort of talk about where they're at and opening that door on a personal level to whatever degree you can handle it. And helping people navigate the benefits. I think it's really important that you connect with lawyers or go to the webinars that are free right now. I just posted 3 different links about CERB, all the different acronyms of the benefits that I could find of simple walkthroughs. Like, it's really important you're able to help your team if you can't help your team. I know that sounds kind of weird, but like, if you're unable to like actually support them through the means of your company, there's also a new mental health resource that just came up in Health Canada yesterday. I haven't checked it out, but in whatever way, I know it kind of sucks to send someone a link. It's like the worst way to like help someone out, but like there are people responding to this, so don't reinvent the wheel. Like, be aware of what resources are there so that even if you're not sending them the link, you're helping them navigate the systems if you feel that that's appropriate, because, you know, people's jobs are changing and we don't have time to write new roles for them. And we don't know if they're going to be employed tomorrow. So really that honest communication, both internally and externally, is I'm seeing in the groups that I'm working with, it seems to be effective for them. And a lot of them have been able to stay afloat, at least in the last month, because of that.
Great. Carissa, are there any other comments? I do have one more question, but I wanted to give, yeah, go for it.
So another question, can you provide any resources on membership platforms?
What's a membership platform?
So I think that's more if you're building an online community and you want a membership for fee-based kind of platform. That's what I gather that means. I don't know, do either one of you have experience with that?
I mean, right now in the for-profit space, because a lot of us are pivoting towards digital products, Stu McLaren is like the industry expert for membership sites, if you're looking at a subscription-based model. And then I would also recommend Brendan Bouchard if you're also willing to broaden out. So if you're looking at monetizing webinars, you're looking at online courses, that would also be a really good one. And a lot of people are using Kajabi if you're doing online courses.
So the first name was Stu McLaren?
Stu McLaren for membership sites specifically. He's very obsessed about that.
Thank you. So there's also another question that came through on how to leverage partnerships during COVID. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a lot. So again, on the boards that I'm on, again, the word opportunity has been used, and I keep saying that, but I think it's important the language that we use. I don't want to use that word. I don't know another word right now to use, but I think like leveraging the possibilities of what pivot looks like and who's wanting to respond to that, but also being first in line if you feel it's appropriate. And some people are saying, I'm actually not first in line. Someone should be ahead of me, so I'm not going to go after that. So it's actually being really conscious of the space that you're garnering and aiming for and aligning. So there's some CSR stuff with one of the charities. I don't know if it's official yet, so I don't know if I can announce it, but around access and technology. And they went and approached that access and technology platform and asked for both devices and access to internet. So there are things that are happening. What I would say is really don't be afraid to call a company and say, I have this idea right now. Our community really needs this. We just need 500 or 1,000 phones for the young people in our programs, or we need, this. And it could be actually a really positive marketing. The one thing, there is a big risk right now. A lot of people companies do not want to support gatherings. So if you're proposing the sponsorship or funding for a public gathering, that's bad PR for companies right now. So just as a heads up, some of the risk management stuff I'm hearing around board tables is don't go asking for to fund our next festival in person. Go asking to move it online. Like the charity I work on that does a film festival is moving all their film festivals online, and it actually broadens to an international audience. And then they ask for a donation. So like, how can you get creative around asking for resources and getting more resourceful with the stuff that you already have? And I've seen it done in so many different ways. And then accessing the government wage subsidies and doing all those calculations and seeing if you qualify, and if you don't, advocating the government on why you should qualify. Like get together with 20 people in your sector who don't qualify in the same way, send a letter, get them to sign it. And I've seen those people break through the government with the right level of influence. So don't be shy.
That's amazing.
to advocate right now, because it's never worked more with millions and millions of dollars being redirected than it has like right now. So advocacy is real and powerful.
Great, thank you. Time for one more question. Carissa, do you want to?
Yeah,
Is there
so we
anything else?
have Sean asking a question for any thoughts on business willingness to in considering sessions based on mental health sessions versus online module based online platforms for staff. So so perhaps the comparison between the mental health sessions versus online modules for staff specifically. Would anyone like to speak to that?
When you're saying that, like, are we talking about, is it for the team or are we talking about for the community? I was just curious.
So perhaps for staff, so for the team, yes.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, for the team right now, we've been mostly using like Zoom, and a lot of us have all of our like we also use WhatsApp as well. So like the team, like we streamlined all of our communication, and just to make it more personable too, like we've been sending each other videos. Like I send my team even like voice notes and things like that. And then we usually do check-ins, like for example, in the morning. So like something that's all of us together. And then they also know that they can privately like do check-ins as well with individual team members or with myself.
Great. So we have
I just want to sort of jump in and say, just me, I'm not a mental health professional, and I would really, if people are in crisis, and a lot of people, to Cherry Rose's point earlier in her presentation, may find themselves in crisis right now or in the near future, like go to the professionals. Like really, I really think it's really important now more than ever to connect when you need that support with professionals, because I don't want to come across as some sort of mental health person who knows what to do. Like I would really say, start with the Health Canada website and the resources you have around you. Kids Health Phone just amplified their services, jack.org. There's so many things. I don't want to come across as like giving advice on what you should do with mental health, because I am not a certified professional. So I just wanted to add that context to anything to do with mental health. I don't know, not on a liability level, but on like a giving you the right advice level, honestly.
So I'm gonna share the floor with Kyle Monzak, who has a question. So if you're there, Kyle.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Cool. Hey, Mikey. Hey, Cherry. And thanks everybody else for hosting it. So it's been an awesome session. My question was directed to a point that Cherry was speaking about, which is this idea about where the puck will go. And I think it's crazy important to consider that. The question is kind of like in that subtext of the slide, Cherry, where it was, we're looking at 24 months possibly before a vaccine. And then we're, thinking that far in advance, we're really talking about a complete, like, almost like destruction of how we're currently operating with our products and services versus, let's say, 6 months out. So our organization is moving virtually, as many people are, but trying to predict that far in the future and how what people will be looking for, the types of services that we'll need, and like what the economy will look like, it just seems so chaotic. So do you guys have any ideas or any recommendations or thoughts around how to project that far, and or if it's worth it, and anything that you've done personally?
Yeah, so Kyle, I can give you tactical things that might help you plan, because just because I don't know what's happening in your particular industry. So the way that I've been able to respond is I do a lot of private conversations with community leaders in different verticals. So for example, I'm signed to speaker bureaus and stuff. So I had keynotes, the keynotes are gone. And for example, one of the things that I did is I sourced out people who know the people who run hotels. And I asked them, hey, what do you project is happening right now with event spaces? And then I asked the people who are running retreats, hey, what's happening with your revenue right now? Are your entrepreneurs or are your people signing up for tickets, or are people asking for refunds? And then I've also done even conversations with, so for example, so this is where you get creative, right? So it's almost like thinking about where are all the touch points that your people gravitate to. So for example, my tech CEOs, a lot of their kids are probably being sent to independent schools. So I asked the president of the Independent Association, who accredits the schools, to have a conversation with me. And then I found out the projections of what's happening there in those schools, about what's happening with tuition. This is what the business families are saying. And so based on that, I was able to kind of obviously estimate a guess, oh, people are looking right now at self-sufficiency. And also people right now are struggling with mental health because there's so much guilt and shame around laying off their people, taking care of their kids, especially if you have kids who have special needs. And so that's why we pivoted our resources the way that we did. And so that's what I would suggest in terms of tactical stuff for Intel.
Great. Thank you so much to our participants, to Michael and Cherry Rose. We are over time, and just to be respectful of everyone's lives and whatnot, I know this is very rich, and we could probably take all day to ask you a ton of questions. You've been super, super helpful, and just brought the reality of what's going out there for both of you and others to us, so thank you. If people have questions, can they get in touch with you afterwards if they wanted to connect? I know, Michael, you've offered your community as well. You're doing free sessions right now. So I know in your PowerPoints, your contact information is in there, which we'll pass on to everyone. And to wrap up, I wanted to again thank everyone for joining us. Please do keep connected with us at Edge as well. We will have sessions that we'll be promoting over the month of May as well. And just one plug in terms of both our speakers and those that are on our participant list. We are always at Edge looking for volunteer mentors that we can connect our members to. So if you're interested in being available to us and chatting with our members, if they do have questions that may relate specifically to Sociant or not-for-profit, please reach out to me as well. We would love to build our network of awesome people. Carissa, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap up? And then I'll just open it up to Michael and Cherry for final thoughts, and then we'll wrap up for today.
Yeah, so just wanted to again thank you, our speakers, our guest speakers, did an awesome job, and we definitely saw that from our attendees. Giving a round of applause there. I'll shout you out, Nikki. So thank you everyone for attending. We hope you got a lot out of it, and then we'll be sharing the slides shortly. So thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing, to Carissa and to Golnaz, but also to everyone. What you're doing, whatever you're doing is important, and what you're feeling is valid. So, I send my heart out to you, and if you ever want to connect, I'll make myself available. So keep up the great work.
Yeah, and I think adding on to Mike, we're grateful to be here. It's not an easy time to be the inspiring light, to be taking a stand on your mission still with everything that's happening is going on. So obviously acknowledging all of your commitment, and similarly, feel free to contact me at any time, and also an encouragement too to reach out to communities, because even as somebody who leads a community of people who lead communities. Like I have very sacred places that I go to be able to get to receive and to be able to ask for help. So don't be afraid to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We wish everyone a wonderful day. Thank you. Great session. High five. Bye.